Welcome to Nitpicking Nerds. Today, we have 5 tips for you.
5 tips to help lower your mana curve.
I'm your host, Joe Cherries.
I'm your host, Beezy, and that makes us the Nitpicking Nerds. Is your deck too pricey on the old mana cost? You feeling like things are a bit clunky? Well, we're about to help you out, and you can respond by subscribing.
Thank us in a way. And just a little updated disclaimer guy. He'll be back Monday. His vacation officially ends. He's been on unpaid sabbatical.
Unpaid sabbatical. So we are first talking about why do I actually want to lower my curve. But before we even talk about that, who is this deck for? Who is this video for?
This video is just for anyone looking to focus their deck and take their curve lower. This is about usually when you're lowering your curve, you're looking to up your power level a little bit. So if we bring your average CMC down, your deck's just gonna function a little more efficiently. So that's one of the benefits I just happened to say.
Right, and this is not a CEDH video. This is for people who are on a budget, people who are playing jank, people who are playing casual, people who are playing toon decks. It's like literally everyone. I mean, even CEDH, it just applies to literally anyone playing Commander. You don't have to lower your average cost from 4.5 to 1.5. This can be as simple as like, all right, my deck's feeling a little clunky and not performing as well as I want. You can just lower it from like cut 5, switch 5 cards around, and now your deck's instead of 3.8, it's at 3.5. It just functions a little bit better.
Yeah, so we're going to go right into what are the advantages of this? What do you get out of doing this? Well, to start, you get to start cutting lands from your deck. When your average CMC is 7, obviously you have to have a much higher land count in your deck.
7.
I just made up
Wow.
Shut up. And if your average CMC is 7, obviously you need a much higher land count for your deck than if your average CMC is around 3, 2, 4, and like those numbers.
Right. When you go lower, where the average cost is between 1 and 2, they've settled right around like 28 to 30 lands. And then I just feel like our philosophy on lands is a little different than people, because we always end up between, I would say almost always between 32 and 36. And I've, like most people, I feel like are at 35 to 40. It's like their average. And I think a lot of that has to do with we play decks at a much lower average CMC.
Yes, our average CMC is so much lower than what was probably the overall average for EDH, especially just going by the tune-ups we've received. We can definitely see the difference in our philosophy of deck building versus other people's.
Yeah, how would we build this? Oh, well, most of the time we just make changes like we would normally make, and then we find out, hey, we lowered the average CMC by half a point or a point or something.
Yeah, we never intentionally, that's false. We do intentionally lower CMC at times, but usually we don't even have to focus on that because the way we build decks often just lowers CMC for us.
Kind of like already, it's like a mental process. We don't even, it's like subconscious. But, in this video, we're just listing out what we think every time we build a deck.
Another advantage, less mulligans, better opening hands. If you have your 6, 7, 8 mana spells, okay, every one of those in an opening hand is what it is basically a mulligan, because those spells are only. It's not actually a mulligan, obviously, but they're not relevant until much later in the game. You want to be drawing those cards off the top, preferably, or tutoring for them or things like that, because you just don't want to be sitting with this H up in your hand for the first 4, 5, 6 turns. Now you've had this one card. You've just been operating with 6 cards, and that's why it's essentially a mulligan.
Yeah, I had this experience. It was a personal experience. I'm not saying this card's bad, but I had Avengers Zendikar in one of my decks, and I'm like, oh man, this card keeps, from random, just pure randomness, it kept ending up in my opening hands. I'm like, oh my god, every time it's like I'll just immediately take the free mull because it's going to have a better 7 than this is, because this isn't 7 cards. I can't plan ahead for this. This card comes out on like turn 7 or 8 or 5 or 6 if I'm ramping, but I'm planning for the first 3 turns. Like, what am I going to do to set up? And it's one less card I can use to set up. It's one less chance I have to see something like Cultivate or some ramp spell that gets me to my late game.
Yeah. So this is number 3. Let's just put something into perspective. You have a deck with an average CMC of 4. You have a deck with an average CMC of 3. They are both the exact same power level for the sake of this argument. The one with 3 will just run more efficiently. The decks might be the exact same power level, but the efficiency just goes up when your spells cost less because you can double spell more often and do things more often. Obviously, if one is 4 and one is 3 and they're the same power level, then 3 is actually more powerful. But it was a thought experiment.
Right. Lowering mana cost doesn't necessarily mean you're increasing power. You can stay at a 4 out of 10 power level totally. You just make your deck a little cheaper and easier to cast, and it'll like be a 4, and then it'll just play better than that. You'll get to play more Magic and feel better about it.
The thing is, it probably actually upgrade you up in a point. Like, it doesn't have to be a tangible.
It depends.
Number. You never know when it's a tangible. It's again, we said this in one of our other videos. We haven't solved the power level thing. It's impossible to solve realistically. So, but lowering your mana curve will make your deck usually better and more efficient, and you'll get to play more Magic.
Exactly. So the last, we're not even to the tips yet, just in case you're wondering. This is still more benefits of lowering your curve. We often win games, if not with some, big one card thing. It's usually you assemble like a critical mass of stuff, and you just go, hey, all of these things equal, I'm going to run you over.
Yes, and again, this is lowering your mana curve allows you to double spell, triple spell, and do a lot more of that because you get critical mass from playing more spells. If you're only playing 1 or 2 spells, you're usually not going to assemble critical mass if you're going like, let's just say you're going Grave Titan and then some other big drop. You just go 6 drop, 7 drop, 8 drop. You're usually not going to get a critical mass. You're just going to have a lot of big fatties.
Right. They can get 1 for 1 or something randomly just takes it out because it was a free roll for the opponent. Mm-hmm. But that's not going to happen if you got like 4 3 drops in play instead of 2 6 drops, for example.
Yes.
All right, so now we have the actual tips of like get in there and lower your curve even just by a couple cards. First tip, start at the top of your curve. This one might not be super obvious, but you can't cut 1 drops and expect your curve to lower.
I mean, this one, I think what you said is false. I think this is super obvious. Obviously, it is an obvious place to start. You want to start at your 6 and 7 drops because those are the cards that for averages are bringing up the most. If you have a 10 drop in your deck, if you want to lower the average CMC, then you start up there. Another thing, this is just a quick mention because what we're talking about cutting 7 and 8 drops, CMC can also be deceiving sometimes. Cards like Dig 2 Time have a CMC of 8 and drag up your average CMC, but that card really costs anywhere between like 2, 3, 4 mana.
Yeah, don't let Tapped Out do it for you. Either put in a placeholder that it is a 2 drop, or just lay it out for yourself, and then you can manually calculate it if you want. It takes some time, but some people are that dedicated. You can't. So like cards 6, 7, 8, 9. Usually we're getting to the point where we're trying to win, and we're getting real darn close. And I find that decks really only need like 1 to 4 win conditions, or like this is how I win. I'm going to do this combo, or I'm going to play Crater of Behemoth, or I'm going to do some backup plan.
Yeah, and if you have like 6 or 7, I would say start cutting down on win cons, and then what I would do is instead of having where you took out win cons, maybe you put in cards that can help you find your win cons.
Right, tutors, card draw, card selection, something like that.
Yeah, exactly. This is going to happen a lot. When you start doing this and you start cutting your 6 and 7 drops, the deck is going to become quote unquote less cool because you're going to be cutting your nickel boluses. You're going to be cutting your mind's dilations. And like don't get me wrong. These cards are totally playable, especially like God Pharaoh Nicol Bolas.
Ooh.
Like that card's very playable, and Mind's Dilation. But it's like if you just if there's so many cool 7, 8 drops, because like as you go up the mana curve to spend more mana, the cards tend to be cooler.
They get more epic. Like the scale can be grander.
Yeah, exactly. And like there's a lot of that, and you might have a little less cool of a deck. But again, this is for lowering CMC and for efficiency. If you like a cool deck, stick with your cool cards, and there's no problem with that either. You can have your 8 CMC deck as long as you're aware that a lot of games you might not get to cast a lot of spells.
Also, you can say, well, I really like this 7 drop. Just keep it in. You can still lower your curve and keep in a couple pet cards. Like obviously, if you come in saying, I like every single card in this deck equally and I will never change anything, well then you're not going to lower your curve.
You don't need
but
to.
Like you could just, you don't have to. We're not even saying you have to lower your curve. We're just saying you can even work around these pet cards or cards that are staples of the deck that happen to be 7 or 8, you can still lower your mana cost.
Ooh, if you're playing a Grixis deck, I so suggest if you want 1 7 drop, play Nicol Bolas God Pharaoh. That card overperforms every single time.
It's so annoying. Yeah, he comes down and he just 6 for 1s.
Oh, he's so good.
Yeah. Anyway, next tip is, can I get the same effect for cheaper? This requires a little bit of doing your research. If you're looking to lower your curve, a lot of where you can squeak it in and make these cheaty plays to lower stuff is removal.
I want to start here. By cheaper, we don't mean money. We mean mana cost. And like that, obviously, the word cheaper could also imply money. So we're talking about mana cost. A great example of this, I think that is perfect, is if you're playing a tokens deck, people when they're building their tokens deck, one of the first cards they go to is Doubling Season. And I just no, because here's why. I mean, if you're not getting use out of the counters or the Planeswalker part on that, you don't want it. Parallel Lives now is the same exact card for less mana.
That's true.
And there's nothing wrong with Doubling Season, but if you're not getting full use out of like all of its type of things it can do, just go to Parallel Lives. If the token part is primarily what you want, save that mana.
Oh, I think we can come back to that one too. That was such a good example. You just pulled out of thin air.
I mean, I was thinking about that one earlier, actually.
Well, you pulled it out of thin air, according to me. It's not on the script. No, nothing we do is ever on the script. Yeah, a lot of this stuff. Another example that I like to see all the time is like Steel Hellkite. Usually it's just in there. It doesn't really have too much synergy. Like maybe it's an artifact and you care about that. Maybe it's a flyer and you care about that. But there's just so many ways to lower that card into a very, very similar effect.
Yep. Oh, yeah, exactly. Steel Hellkite, like you're looking for something that is removal. And sure, Steel Hellkite will get you like free kills on stuff. But you got to remember, it's so weird that if it happens that have to line up for Steel Hellkite to be better. Like they happen to have 2/2 drops in for me to get extra advantage of the Steel Hellkite than I wouldn't get normally. And that's not something you don't want to rely on. What is essentially the random nature of EDH that maybe that situation comes up.
Right. Another like way easier example is I have Croson Grip in my deck. That card's fine. But you can play Nature's Claim in your deck. It's just 2 mana less. It does almost the exact same thing. It's cheaper. You can hold it up better. You can respond more times with it. You can double spell more. Like that's just going to, every time now that you draw Nature's Claim instead of Croson Grip, you're like, whoa, I just saved 2 mana.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great example. Next, take your deck for a test drive. Both in 2 ways, goldfishing and just straight up take it out to friends. The best thing is if you have a group of friends that you play with and you're not necessarily, this doesn't work if you're going to your LGS. They'll let you proxy. It's weird. Some friend groups don't, but most do. You sit down, just proxy up the deck, get it tested, really figure out what high cards aren't doing it for you. Where can I move cards, take them out? It's so important to play test the deck. We almost always play test the deck before we throw. We throw like $100 to like $200 at EDH decks when we build them usually.
Oh yeah,
at minimum, and like we're fine with that. But that's why we test them first. I'm not going to throw $200 away on my EDH deck because I mean our collection's huge, so obviously you might have to spend more than us if you're building certain decks. But we don't want to throw that money away, so we test first, and then we can see this 7 mana spell? Yeah, I played a bunch of. I'll tell you what's underperformed for me at 7 mana from testing only, and I love this card is Mind's Dilation.
Yeah.
It hits lands far too often. It is the target on the card is much bigger than the effect. How good the effect is.
Yes, it totally is.
Well, but the effect is great. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying don't play Mind's Dilation. That card's cool, and I love that card, but there is a downside to it.
That was totally a spot that you found in your own personal deck to be like, whoa, I can cut a 7-drop. And like this card is kind of like a staple card. There's plenty of cards that all over decks like this where, whoa, I get to cut my installation. Forget another staple. I'm going to add like a synergy piece that's going to help me go critical mass or save my butt when I'm in trouble or like so many different things. And that's, oh man, another great example from Joe Cherries.
I mean, I have a second one. Like this is the card that we actually had a lot of conversation about recently because it was on one of our other videos. I literally had the exact same experience with Grave Titan. I put Grave Titan into my my Nicol Bolas the Ravager deck, and it ended up coming out of the deck because it's this big flashy thing, and sure, it's strong. There's no denying that you get 10 power for 6 mana, and that is very good. But after playing with it, it's not impressive. It didn't synergize enough with my deck, and then on top of, I didn't need 3 bodies for 6 mana. It's not something I needed.
Yeah, he had no synergy. I've actually had the reverse. I learned that I didn't want Grave Titan in my decks from playing against it because I would just look, and after everyone plays a card, you go, what does that do for me? What does that do? Should I change my game plan? Am I worried about that? And the answer is never. I need to change anything. It was always just like, all right, maybe have a blocker.
Yeah, if you're on board, it usually doesn't matter too much. You're not going to worry about the 2/2s hitting you. You're going to be worried about the 6/6 hitting you, and as long as you have a chump blocker, which you often will, depending on your deck. If you're obviously Grave Titan is a house. If you're playing a meta where some certain players don't present creatures, that card's a house in that situation.
It's really irrelevant. We're just talking about spots we found. Like here's an example of cards that we have found we can just cut
from playtesting. Yeah, right. that we can bigger things on the end that we can cut from playtesting. We just got off topic a little.
Yeah, cards with no synergy. Anyway, now we're talking about tip number 4. This is when you build a deck and you throw a bunch of cards in, like we often do. We're like, all right, I got 200 cards here. Got to cut it down to 65 or however many. I find that I get really, really, really piled up at 3. There's so many good 3 drops with synergy that's always where I end up. I end up cutting most of the stuff down, and I even got my 6s and 7s and 8s out of there, and then I end up with 35 3 drops, like literally, and I have to cut. I'm like, I can't play 35 3 drops.
So a mana curve is supposed to look very smooth. You should see, if you look at it on a graph, which you can easily look at it on a graph, there's a lot of sites that do that for you. It should go, wow, I know I'm doing on the table. It should go like this, basically, and just be like a nice smoothish curve. And if there's waves in it, you really want to smooth it out. So say like the dips in 4 and it goes back up on 5, you want to probably cut some 5s and maybe put a 4 in or 2.
Right. It doesn't really matter where the peak is either.
No.
Your deck's going to peak. Every deck's going to peak at a different, like, oh, my deck peaks at 2.45. My deck peaks at 5. It's like, it doesn't really matter. You just want it to be, what is it?
Bell curve.
A bell curve. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, you're looking to keep a smooth curve, and like I said, if one thing sticks out, if you're at your 3 drop slot, it's way up here, and then the other, like the points are here, and it's basically just like a straight line up. Yeah. There's not even a curve there. It's literally just a straight line to the top because it's so pointed. Then cut that down. Sometimes even when this is a tip for not even just like necessarily smoothing out this is for smoothing out rather than just lowering, because if you just shove everything at 3 drop, you're gonna have a lot of issues there. It's like if you're just going to run into the issue of like on turn 3, I'm going to play a 3 drop. On turn 4, I'm going to play a 3 drop. And on turn 5, I'm going to play a 3 drop. And you never double spell at that point.
Yeah, let's make it, you just draw the extreme. Every card in your deck costs 3 mana. Well, your average cost is 3. That's probably lower than what your average cost was before. But your deck is going to function way worse. You got nothing to do on 1 or 2. And now 4 and 5 is just more 3s. That's not going to function. You want healthy spread.
Exactly. You want to spread it out. The big splashy spells, especially when you're casual, they're very important, and they're very important in like all EDH actually. Those you need to have some big splashy spells because you need to have that large impact in the game. But you also just at the same time you got to be careful to not put too many or just all 3 drops. Like we said, smooth out the curve, keep it a nice bell curve.
All right, wait. So now this is the part where I'm going to reiterate something that we said in the beginning of the video. This advice can be used for literally any human being who plays Commander and wants to lower their average curve. So whether or not you're on a budget or playing competitive or playing casual or playing tuned, you can use this advice. For example, if you want to cut a card and it costs 50 cents and it's 6 mana, there are cards that cost 50 cents that are 4 mana that you could play instead. It's not like I'm saying cut your... This isn't, well, like we did say this before, but we're not saying cut Runescar Demon for Demonic Tutor. Like that's not what we're talking about now. Because if you're on a budget, just don't do that.
Yeah, this is a great. Here, you want to cut Runescar Demon out of your deck? I would cut Runescar Demon for like what's the 5 mana Dark Petition
or Sidisi.
I mean, those aren't great examples because that's not really saving money. Sidisi's like 10 and 12.
Oh, we were talking about money. I was still talking about mana. This video's about mana. We're confusing everyone.
Everything comes in the.
It applies to a budget. This is evergreen content. I promise you. Your circumstances don't affect the fact that you can actually lower your CMC.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can. There's a lot of. You might even have to. There's often going to be cases that are going to come up where you're going to have a card that costs 4 mana and a card that costs 3 mana. The card that costs 3 mana has a slightly worse effect, but it's going to get there in the same way. And that's why you should go with the 3. And it's weird because it's not inherent. Like you might see, like maybe let's just say you have no counter synergies in your deck, and makes your 3 mana makes your creatures indestructible, 5 mana makes your creatures indestructible, and they randomly get a counter. Take the 3 mana one every single time. You don't want that extra counter. You want to rely on reliably paying 3 mana.
The last tip?
Yes.
Tip number 5 out of 5. Be willing to sacrifice power on a card, like power and toughness, for a similar effect. We're talking, this is the perfect Grave Titan example.
Yes.
We're going to frame this example. So the following of what I'm going to say is how we're going to frame the example. Got to be very clear. Got to be very careful around Grave Titan. I'm not going to mess any words up. It is a 6-mana 6/6 that makes 2/2/2 zombies. All right. You can say, I'm playing this card because I want 3 bodies on 1 creature. 1 ETB that gives me 3 bodies. Because I'm going to use it with maybe Displacer and Ashnod's Altar to make infinite Nim Deathmantle. I'm going to get infinite sacks, infinite triggers. It's like an aristocrat type thing. That's what I want the 3 bodies for. Well, okay. In that case, I would say since we don't think the 10 power for 6 mana thing is really relevant, and it's not how you're not actually trying to win with a 6/6 and 2/2s, then you can just cut it, and you can put in its place. We just have 2 examples: Weaponcraft Enthusiast or Siege Gang Lieutenant.
Sling Gang
Lieutenant, and they're going to make 2/1/1s or 2/0/1s for 3 mana. It's half the mana, or 4 mana, not as much of the mana. And then Sling Gang even comes with, if you can get to infinite flickers, you have infinite tokens, and it wins the game by itself. Now that just wins.
Yeah. So again, I would say if you just look at these, this is also another obvious case of you're losing coolness. Grave Titan looks cooler, is cooler, and it has a lot of flair to it. But you can get that same kind of effect if you're looking for 10 power for 6 mana. Sure, go with Grave Titan. That is something we're never looking for. I'm not looking to get the highest power toughness for mana. There's very few cases of that. Like the things that defy that rule are Sarah Ascended. That's about all that defies that rule.
Well, when your deck cares about power, but I'm taking synergy over power toughness every time. Weaponcraft Enthusiast, he does look really cool. He looks like a badass, but he's a 0/1 for 3. That is the least splashy card in the whole world. But he gets you 2 tokens. He does the same thing. You're gonna win just sooner. He's not even threatening at all. You lose all of the, oh my god, this thing could attack me for 6. That's not even a question anyone's going to ask. They're going to ask, why is this in your deck? Maybe they go, yeah, it's a threat because I have to kill it so they don't combo, because I understand that they can make infinite dudes. But you lose a whole dimension of it. No one is going to be scared of this attacking them, and I think it'll get removed less than Grave Titan will.
Yeah, exactly. Again, that's where I think that might be this another point. That might be where we differ from a lot of people. Is we don't want to spend 6 mana to get 10 power, and that's it. That's just not what we're looking for ever.
Well, we're willing to trade power for synergy.
Yeah, exactly. I'm looking to spend. If I spend 6 mana, I'm looking to have a huge impact in the game in multiple ways, not just in power toughness on the board.
That does not have to be the case for you. You can still lower your curve and play Grave Titan. I promise you.
Yes, it doesn't. Yes,
these tips are universal.
These tips are universal. Well, that is actually all of our tips for lowering your mana curve today. And special shout outs to all of our patrons. We love you all as much as we can without making you comfortable. You guys are awesome. You really make this channel function. You've helped us grow, and I can't even tell you, it's becoming such a community in our Discord that it's so nice to watch. It's interesting because it's people whose common thread was us.
Yep.
Became a community, and that's cool. That's really cool.
Right, because I don't have to message the Discord for them to be blowing it up. Sometimes man, Discord's going crazy right now. Sometimes you and I are hanging out.
Sometimes I can't even go back and reread all the messages because there's so many.
It's great. Anyway, other ways to support the channel if you don't want to be a patron. You don't have to be. Look, we got merch. We're wearing it. Cool. It's in the description. You can go buy it, or you can go check out. There's going to be some link. I might just link to a deck list that's just Grave Titan, so click that link. You can navigate to Grave Titan. You can either buy Grave Titan or any other card that's ever existed, and we get a kickback on the order when you use the TCG Player affiliate link.
So I do want to say something about these shirts. These shirts are a little blurry right now. We actually did an update to the design, so they will be less blurry. We put in our second order. We're going to be getting those probably in a couple weeks because orders are way behind. Coronavirus has made things crazy. They're at 50% staff.
Oh yeah.
So when we get our other version in, we will wear those, and you can see what they look like. They will look better than this.
Tell them about your stream.
I stream weekdays at 10 o'clock. I've been doing a lot of Zendikar draft, and I'm on the verge of Mythic. I am in Diamond Tier 2.
Oh boy.
And I have been I killed it today. I won 5-3, 5-3. And I was 2-1 when I ended my stream.
Nice.
Just great winning records. I'll take 5-3s all day because best of ones, you can just some of the best decks I've ever drafted have gone 0-1 or 0-3. Just
I swear we could do a really good limited video at some point. When we go to 4 videos a week, I feel like we can just drop one limited video. That's the only, and then it's everything we know about limited. Watch this if you want to transition from EDH to also playing limited. But the tidbit, I wanted to just talk about the shirt for a second, the actual hoodie.
Okay.
So in terms of reviewing an actual product, I literally put this on before we started recording. It's really comfortable.
It's comfortable. One thing I will say about it is it's a little hot in BC's basement, and I thought it was cooler out. It's cooler outside right now.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm wearing the hoodie. I am sweating a little bit because it's actually so warm.
It's really tough. It actually is really hot. Like we said, to be completely honest. This design is a little blurry. If you want to order it right exactly now, we have changed it, right?
We have changed it. It is updated and it's going to look better. And we will have merge 2.0 again in like 2-3 weeks. But there is nothing wrong with this. I would order this if I don't really buy merch per se. That's not really my thing to buy. But if I did, I would, and I love the YouTube channel enough. Like I would order a shirt that looked like this.
Yeah, it's not like this flimsy piece of crap. Like I was a little worried when we put the order in for merch. I thought it might be like a flimsy piece of crap, but I kind of like it.
It's just normal.
I would wear this to public.
I would wear this to public.
That's it. We're done.
You only wear it to Publix.
Or did you want to mention something else did you say you wanted to mention something at the end? Or am I imagining that?
I don't know. It's too late now because I had nothing.
The video's over.
What
are we doing?
Peace out, Tribe Scout.